Hey, it's Lisa Wimberger here. I'm the founder of Neurosculpting, and I have helped thousands of people learn really powerful tools to regulate their minds and their bodies, including pro athletes, entrepreneurs, and those with serious stress-based illnesses. So I'm really excited to help you do the very same thing through education and some incredible guest experts. And together, we're going to discover the formula to unlock hope. So welcome. Hey there. So we are so fortunate today to have Ben Pakulski with us. I got to speak with him, it was probably about a year and a half ago already, or I don't know, even longer. But Ben is considered the godfather of intelligent muscle building. That's quite the statement, but this is true because I've been following your podcast and I've been following your work, and you are a wealth of information. He is considered the world's best muscle expert and top authority on physique optimization and lifestyle integration, specifically for men over 35. He teaches 6 pillars of lean, healthy, and muscular body. He's the CEO of the Muscle Intelligence brand. He does the Muscle Intelligence podcast, and the creator of MI40, which I'm not sure I know what that's about, so we can talk about that. He's also considered a former top 10 bodybuilder in the world, having competed in Mr. Olympia and the Arnold Schwarzenegger Classics. And when you're not busy doing all of that and being a massive social media influencer, he's spending time with his children, which that's a lot to juggle, Ben, but I'm so happy you made time for me today. So thanks for being here.
You make it sound like I'm doing a lot of things, and maybe it's an accumulation, right? At least you get it over time. It's just like this relentless pursuit of understanding how I can be the greatest contributor in my space and just loving what I do. So I mean, it definitely made it sound like I do a lot, and maybe I do, but
Well,
I appreciate the intro.
I think you should own your accomplishments because
Nice.
you've been driven for a really long time. I mean, I do want you to talk about, the energy, the health, the optimization that you share with the world. But I really want to start with, it didn't start easy for you. You had challenges, but you were so driven at a young age to really push yourself. I'm kind of curious because I just did a podcast with another like pro athlete kind of level person, and she said something interesting. She said, so many of us are driven because we're running from our demons. And that hit me. And I'm wondering if that was true for you. What are your thoughts on
Yeah,
that?
100%. So the irony of my life is I grew up probably until the age of 12, being told I had a learning disability. I had a speech impediment because I spoke with a stutter, and I was obese. So those are my three, like my
Wow.
trilogy, right? So what I realized is I didn't actually have a learning disability. I just had a dysfunctional lifestyle as a child, which I can talk about. My
Yeah.
speech impediment was due to just like crippling fear of adults because of the circumstances I grew up in. And obesity was because nobody ever gave me any direction or cared about what I was eating. And I was eating really poorly. So those three things literally turned into what I do today. Now I obviously make a living speaking on stage, educating, and then as a professional bodybuilder, which is, the exact opposite of what my biggest pains were as a child. So I completely agree with that.
Yeah. And so, how did you even come into health? Because you started with a bunch of disadvantages, right? Parents who didn't educate you on health and well-being, parents who might have contributed greatly to your fear, which then converted into your disability, disability in quotes, right? The stuttering. How did you take a massive leap out of that paradigm and into one that was going to get you into the gym? I don't see how those two
Yeah,
things.
yeah. So I'll tell you, it's interesting. One of the things that I continue to tell people to this day is like, even when you're in a really hard situation where everyone around you doesn't feel supportive, it feels like everyone's doing everything other than you are. The hardest thing in the world to do is be who you are in that space. And the reason I'm so adamant about that to people is because those were the people that gave me the permission to be something other than my family was. And I'll tell you what that means.
Mm.
I remember so clearly watching the kids across the road and talking to them, they were in my class and going, and one of them saying, yeah, I really love my brother. I didn't know it was possible to love your sibling. I thought you were just supposed to fight each other. I didn't realize it was possible to respect your parents and like be kind to them and speak nicely. I didn't know. So all I knew was like anger and turmoil and hostility, and everyone was always at everyone's throat. And so I could watch across the road and watch this beautiful family just like care for each other. I was like,
Whoa.
what is it about them, right? Why do they get to do that and I have to be stuck in this? And so that gave me permission to think differently. And that was just such a gift for me from a very young age.
Wow. So what got you into the gym?
Sports. So when I was a kid, I always say I was a lone wolf, right? From the time I was 7 years old, I was spent 98% of my time by myself. And so I got into just like individual sports, like as many things I could do by myself. I was like, yeah, I'm doing it. Let's go. Because I didn't want to be in the chaotic turmoil of the house. I would literally wake up in
Mm.
the morning, run out the back door, and then by the time the sun was coming down and the street lights were coming on, I was coming back in.
So you
That was
literally were running from your demons.
yeah, literally. And
Okay.
so I became pretty good at sports because that's all I did. Like if I could find someone playing a game, I was going to join. If I could find them doing something that was not me being in my house, I was there. So because I became good at sports, people started taking notice and making suggestions about like, hey, if you want to get good at this, you should probably, by the time I was 14, they're like, you should probably join a gym. So I
Mm.
joined the YMCA and it was like I had never felt so good in my life. I became obsessed. I literally went every single day because it was this escape from, you know, maybe some semblance of anger and depression and loneliness that I experienced every day as a child. And I go to the gym and I feel fulfilled and I feel like accomplished. I was like, oh my gosh, this is the greatest. No idea what
Was
I'm
it
doing.
off the personal accomplishment, or were you also finding your people, or not yet?
Not yet. No. So I
Okay.
didn't really start finding my people until I went to university. And
Gotcha.
gosh, I think university, the exclusive reason I was able to go to university or colleges is because of exercise, right? I started to believe in myself and my ability to make a change. So when I started to train, I started to go, gosh, like I can actually change my body. Like this is crazy. I didn't think this was possible before.
How long before you started seeing changes that started to fuel themselves?
Pretty quickly, probably three
Really?
months. Yeah,
See,
probably.
I'm asking that because I've never been a gym person until the last, I would say, couple of years. And the whole first year, I had to have a personal trainer because I'm not the kind of person that's going to go unless I am paying someone too much money that it causes a pain for me to miss it.
Yeah.
Right. So it has to be like
Yeah.
that balance. But the whole first year, I had to talk myself into going every single time. And I don't know that I was, seeing the physical results yet, but for me, the game changer was getting on that machine. I got on the machine when I first started, and then a year later, that gets your BMI and your skeletal muscle mass and your hydration, right? And I saw that I had lost body fat, gained muscle mass. So even though I couldn't see it on the outside yet, the numbers flipped something. So I know my moment of, oh, this is really working. So for you, that moment of, oh, this is really working, that was like what you said, within like 3 months.
Yeah. So I
Wow.
literally went from never having worked out, from being a guy who did like some long distance running, and I only ran because I wanted to run until I felt really like pain inside,
Mm,
and basically a vegetarian. And then I flipped to like I want to build muscle, and I started eating meat, and I started training with muscle with weight, and my weight went up pretty quickly. My body started to change pretty quickly. I was also 15 years old, probably full of hormones.
right.
And that's all I did, right? Like after school, I would literally every day, I would never miss it. It's the first thing I did. I didn't have any
Wow.
expectations on myself, right? As an adult, you probably have this set of expectations. I had no idea what was possible. I was like, I'm just going to go and do the same thing every day. And I just was like, yeah, just go and play. It almost became unsupervised play for me. It was like, I'm just going to go in and like watch these big guys who I kind of want to emulate and do what they do. And
Well,
that's how it
how
started.
fascinating, because I mean, and you know all about neuroplasticity, but curiosity and play is one of the fastest ways to learn and adapt. And you just naturally, intuitively put yourself in that no expectation, curiosity, let me play space. And wow, you started seeing pretty massive results.
Mhm.
But you mentioned the word obsessive. So I'm curious about when you finally felt that it was balanced for you?
Um, Probably when I retired from bodybuilding. So I think
Yes.
people take the word obsessive to be something negative, and I think in my instance, I don't know that it was. I think it was
Mm,
like I was just so persistent and so committed to being like when I started, the obsession was like I just want to feel that way. So
mm,
it started with just this pursuit of I really like the way I feel, and then it started to be I really like the way I look, and then it started to be like I'm starting to get some attention, and then people started paying me for this thing, and then I had this pursuit to be the best in the world, and what it was this graduation of my internal and external pursuits or motivations. And when I was a bodybuilder, I didn't recognize myself as a bodybuilder until I was probably almost 30 years old at this point. Like I was a guy who trained and
and
I
you had
competed,
already
but
won competitions,
yeah, I wasn't
and you
ready a
still weren't
professional.
recognizing yourself as a bodybuilder.
Oh, I just never, you know what? I always said bodybuilding is what I did. It's not who I am. And
Mm,
it's just like, I just loved to train. I always saw the kind of as a pageant, and the training in between the competitions was really what I thrived on. I just loved challenging myself because I identified as a child as a really lazy person because I came from this family of lazy people who all told me that I was lazy and I was going to be just
mm,
like them. And my teachers all said, "Hey, you're not going to amount to anything because you're lazy. You're not doing these things." So in my mind, I had this story that I was lazy and I hated it. I had personal resentment, and so this constant pursuit of like I just love to train, I want to push myself, I just kept getting better. So that's probably where the obsession kind of manifested. And then I think it was a quote unquote healthy obsession, because you don't get to be the best in the world at something without being some level of obsessed.
yeah, you were proving to yourself you weren't lazy. Like it was
Yeah,
the
every
living,
day.
breathing proof every day that you weren't lazy.
Yeah.
Was it at all changing your relationship to your family?
So interestingly, no. By the time I was 27, I was actually I came to the day because I started this personal development journey and I started reading about like you are the five people you surround yourself with, and
Mm-hmm.
so I just decided I was going to actually go the next day and tell my parents I didn't want to talk to them anymore. I was like, I'm just going to cut them out of my life. And I had a guy who was, quote unquote, coaching me at the time. He was actually a manual therapist, but he was like really, really helpful for me mentally. He's still one of my best friends to this day. And he goes, "Whoa, whoa, 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 you're not doing that." He's like, "You're just as much responsible for that relationship as they are. Let's have a
Mm,
conversation about it." So he really changed the way I looked at that relationship. And because I would come to the relationship with anger and hostility and emotion that was carried from my childhood, my parents would also come with the same level of hostility. So it was like just like sparks every time we connected.
yeah.
So I was able to kind of change the way I perceived it in my brain, and I went in with no emotion. And so the thing that I didn't share is I was 27 years old, and my dad had never called me by my real name. I don't want to throw him under the bus, but he'd never
Yeah.
called me by my real name. He'd call me any derogatory name under the sun, and every time it just hurt me. I was like, I don't want this in
Yeah.
my life. Like I feel like I'm
Yeah.
growing. And so from the time I was 3, he had never called me by anything that wasn't derogatory. And so I went into
Wow.
that conversation with like, hey, you know what? I want you to start calling me by my name. Like I don't remember exactly what I said, but something to the effect of like, hey, you know what? Like that's not working for me anymore. Like I want to have a conversation about how we can respect each other, and I want you to call me by my name. And he goes, okay, well, what do you want me to call you? And I go, how about son? How about Ben? And he goes, okay. And
Wow.
like flipped just because I didn't come with emotion like anger and
Right.
hostility.
You changed the
It was
whole
just,
base premise.
yeah. And so literally ever since we've had a father-son relationship. Before that, I didn't have a father ever. I had
Wow.
maybe a companion, maybe a friend, maybe a ATM, someone
Yeah.
who'd provide money for me.
Yeah.
But never did I have someone that I talked to. He had never said I love you in my life. We'd never hugged, literally ever. So like after that point, him and I since then for the last 14 years now have had a great relationship, right? As great as it can be, and I don't carry any hostility from my childhood. So it was a big shift.
Wow. That's amazing. I have not quite that same story, but I have a family member, and it had been very, very estranged and very strained, and for years. And I remember someone saying, "Well, do you need to talk to this family member and get an apology or justice?" And for so long, I had wanted that, and then I said, "No, what if I never get the apology? What if I never get the, justice in quotes? So instead, how about I change my relationship to the whole situation, much like you did? And it flipped. It just flipped when I think it goes back to dropping those expectations and coming in um, with your self-directed vibration, right? The choice you have to show up in the moment however you want, independent of the way they've locked you into a pattern. And that is a game changer, clearly, because you got your father back, or you got a father. I wouldn't even say back, you got a father. Okay, so basically, you're overcoming your limitations through this whole process of getting healthy and going to the gym. But I imagine that competing might have been a challenge for you to stay balanced or healthy. I don't know a lot about the competition world. I just do know that I know people who are in it who say it's really difficult to stay
Yeah.
balanced. What's your
Yeah.
experience with that?
I don't think there is balance in that sport. I think, I
Mm,
mean, and I think you could relate it to any sport. Lisa, I think you could say any sport at the top, at the highest level. I don't know that it's possible to be balanced. You have to be so driven and almost ruthless with your time and your focus and your energy. Like everyone I talk to who competes at a high level in anything is like, no, there's no balance when I'm training for the Olympics. There's no balance when I'm training for the World
mm-hmm,
Series. Like, no, I just like I'm just in it.
mm-hmm,
And someone who can learn to be balanced is truly blessed. And I don't think I started to receive or achieve balance until my children changed my perspective. Like my children were born within 18 months of each other. And, and I think that was the first time in my life where my only focus in life wasn't me. Well, I was no
wow.
longer the center of my world. It
Mm-hmm.
shifted. Yeah.
But you also got into meditation, and I know that was some pivotal change for you. When did that happen? How did you
Yeah.
come about that? Like, what did it change for you?
So right, same guy who helped me with my dad
This
also
is a
introduced me
very
to.
important guy.
Yeah, I'll share who he is. He's he's
Okay.
he's just true. And people who come into my life, I always take the framing of these are angels, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so I've had so many angels come into my life and bless me in so many ways. And whether they remain in your life or they just pass
Mm-hmm.
through, they're just coming and they're giving you these lessons and these gifts. So right around the same time, 2007, I had probably three other people in my life who I felt influenced how I showed up, meaning people who were able to make me different than I felt I am inside. They're able to
Mm.
push my buttons, make me angry, make me frustrated. And so this coach at the time was like, no, man, like that's all you. Like you can't, no one in this whole world can influence your emotions or how you feel unless you let them. And so he set me down this path of studying Dr. Wayne Dyer and understanding meditation. And so I started meditating. Yeah, so I was 26 years old, 2007, and committed to it pretty diligently in the beginning because I saw an immediate benefit in my ability to not react. Like I'd
Mm-hmm.
be in the middle, you're the eye of the storm, and you're like, oh, I can watch all these things unfold and not feel like I'm, bubbling under the collar, and I can just exist in this. And I was like, I didn't think this was possible. And that really just opened up my eyes to I don't have to be angry. I don't have to be reactive. I can choose to remain me, who I am in my heart, and not allow these external circumstances to impact me in any way that I don't want them to. And it was just
Mm.
such a gift. I'm an enormous Dr. Wayne Dyer fan, so
Mm-hmm.
much so that I named his daughter or my daughter after his daughter. There's a good story there too. I
Oh,
haven't
that's
shared,
so
but
great.
yeah, and that was where it all began for me. I started this personal development journey with consuming everything I could from Dr. Wayne Dyer, and then a bunch of other people in that era.
Yeah. So, okay, so now this is all coalescing into how you serve your population, men over 35, bringing them the pillars that you bring them and helping them understand, energy and optimization. So, what are you bringing to them? What's the mission here?
Yeah. So for the longest time, I was myopically focused on my body, right? I wanted my body to be the best in the world, and that's all that mattered. And along the way, you discover things that make your body more effective, things that make muscle building easier, things that make fat loss easier, things that allow you to succeed in the mindset aspect of it, to balance stress and the autonomic nervous system. But even in that, so that's where my business started, was just in that realm. Like, I'm going to optimize for performance, and
Mm-hmm.
it was no consideration of like the balance that exists outside of the performance realm. It was just like, hey, be really good at what you're really good at. And then when my children were born, which was 2012 and 13, it just changed my priorities. I was like, my purpose in life can't just be me anymore. I have so much more to live for. And so I started to realize that there was all these other things that needed to be balanced for people, which, obviously is relationships and lifestyle and your environment and all these other aspects of, the balance between the performance you and maybe the relationship you and then maybe professional you, and finding all the avatars of you that you want to optimize. And so six pillars is my my best attempt to condense down all of the things into a blueprint or framework that we
Mm-hmm.
need to think about when we're aspiring to optimize life. And I try to create these frameworks as a as an opportunity to have an all-encompassing, really, really high-level framework from which to kind of chunk down, right? So like when you think of fitness or you think of muscle building, you think of performance, you think of all these different potential categories. It's such a broad spectrum. But the six pillars is so simple, and the framing is there's really only six inputs or signals that you can um, introduce to the body to elicit a change, right? So if you think of all of the things that exist in health and fitness, there's really only six ways to interact with the body to actually elicit a change. So we're like, okay, there's really only six things we ever need to know about in order to change our body or our
Ooh, what
state.
are the six?
Well, so if you think about it, how we move
Mm-hmm.
is a big one, and that's obviously like an enormous potential subcategory.
Mm-hmm.
How we move, how we eat, so how we nourish our body, so movement, nourishment, how we sleep,
Mm-hmm.
how we breathe, how we think, and then the environment in which we do them. And those
Mm-hmm.
are like, so if you think of all the different potential inputs, the potential
Right.
signals that go into the body, there's only six ways. I mean, you could say, well, like hormones and pharmaceuticals, and for sure, you could talk about like all these different potential, um,
But those are
you know,
subsets of any number of these
right,
six. Yeah.
right. So, but there's really, so I can control the way I move. I can control the way I eat. I control the way I sleep. I control the way I breathe. I control the way I think. And then I can control the environment in which I do them. And everything fits into those six categories. So when
Mm-hmm.
someone starts in my ecosystem, we have a full assessment of each of the six pillars. And we say, okay, which of these areas is a strength for you? Which of these areas is a challenge? And then we start addressing the weakest link. As you know, Lisa, you're only as good as your weakest link. If one of these areas is a glaring weakness for you, and we just move it a little bit, everything gets better. And so when people think that nutrition is their biggest problem, to be honest, I would say for 90% of people, nutrition isn't their biggest problem, because if you think of nutrition in terms of behavior, it's the fact that nutrition is a behavior problem. Well, then why do we have a behavior problem, right? Are you eating because you're stressed? Are you eating because your environment is poor, because you got poor foods around you? Are you eating because it's habitual? So it's not really the nutrition that's the problem. It's the reason
Mm.
that you're eating that's the problem. So we have to look a little bit deeper. And then that really opens people's eyes to like, okay, I don't have a nutrition problem. I have a behavior problem. So let's figure out the behavior that we want to change. And that's a completely different lens through which to look at change.
Completely different lens. I actually love these six pillars. And I would say right now, for anyone listening, you could do this right now, starting your own assessment right now. I just wrote them. I always take notes. So I just wrote in my journal these six: move, eat, sleep, breathe, think, and relate. I put relate as like relating
Mm-hmm.
to the environment. Um,
Mm.
to assess the strengths in each and maybe even identify the deficits, and then more efficiently where to focus your time. I love the example that we think it's a nutrition problem, but wait, we actually control. No one's hand is putting that food in my mouth other than my own. Oh, wow, this is a behavior thing.
Mm.
I love that. And then, of course, I
So,
think, I don't know that we realize how much power we have over sleep. I think people just think, oh, I'm not a good sleeper. And we all know now there's a million things that we can control in our environment that can help sleep. So I think these six are, I don't know, these are like life pillars. This is not just for like if you want to get,
Right.
if you want to work out and get fit. This is like, oh, this is good life pillars right here.
Yeah.
Um,
So the environment, just like quickly, when I think of the environment, I want to just summarize. And you said there's many things we can consider. It's light, it's air, it's EMF, it's people. Those are all our environment. I like that you said relate. And all of those things are influencing our internal state, right? So the way I envision this is those six pillars exist on the outside, theoretically.
mhm.
And I picture this like little body of me in the middle, and on the outside I have these six things. And they're simply signals, right? So every one of those signals, from air to light to movement to sleep to breathing, are creating some type of interaction with my internal system that cause a hormonal response, a DNA response, an enzymatic response, some type of internal response. We don't need to know what it is. We need to know it's creating some type of internal response. And then I tend to adapt or react to whatever I feel on the inside, right? So I'm either adapting and reacting based on goals and being a very objective moving toward it, or I'm adapting and reacting to whatever I feel, whatever I'm experiencing in that moment. And I'm trying to either move away from discomfort or move toward pleasure, right? So if we can then start thinking about, okay, well, all these signals that are happening are creating this internal soup, this internal, chemical soup in the body. And then I can start to influence how I feel minute to minute, just to either support a higher level of performance, a higher level of energy, a higher level of optimization of body composition, whatever it happens to be. But at least we know from a high level, what are all these things that are actually impacting my system?
This my jargon around this is that we are the interface, taking the environment and assigning it meaning,
Mm.
and then living that experience of the meaning we assigned. So to your point, if you start assessing the meaning you've made of the input, you can actually change the way you make meaning of it. You can change it from, and I would even say your system is helping people go from victim to empowered, right? The world is happening to me. I'm a bad this, I'm a bad that. And even the stories you grew up with, right? With like, I'm a lazy, these are stories that we've made meaning of and then we've adopted. And you're actually empowering people to shift out of the world's happening to me and into, no, 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 no. I'm the interface here. I'm the common denominator in all of this. And what if I flip that? But that takes a little bit of a level of awareness. So I'm curious, obviously, with your program, people are going to get this. What is out there? What's the thing you can say to people listening right now who maybe don't have access to your program yet, right? Or are never going to take your program. They're just listening to this podcast right now. They're listening to you. They're getting inspired, but now they're in their own world. They're not going to reach out to you and do this, but there's something they could do to make a change. What's the thing that everyone could do right now to start making their changes?
Yeah, I mean, the challenge is always the work, right? It's like I have to sit down. What I would suggest everyone sitting down to do is like just take inventory of those areas. Like,
Mm-hmm.
am I moving enough? Am I moving well? Because there's obviously levels in each area, right? There's like adequacy, like am I doing something? And then there's like competency, and then there's excellence. And everyone wants to move from like simply do to do well, and maybe do well with intentionality, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
progressing through levels of you know, first start, take an assessment and say, well, how do I move and how do I eat and how am I breathing right now? Creating that level of awareness, as you know, Lisa, awareness is the foundation of all change. So how then do we have people just take an assessment, like, well, what is my light? And I think people sometimes don't acknowledge the impact of light on the biological system. It's actually been proven that light is the single biggest influence on our biology, right? Well beyond food, actually well beyond exercise, right? Well beyond our mindset. But people don't acknowledge that. People, they live with their TV on until 11 o'clock at night or 2 o'clock in the morning and then try to go to sleep. And I'm sleeping poorly and I'm anxious and I'm depressed and I have emotional dysregulation. And they don't tie it back to, hey, it's exclusively because you're watching Netflix until midnight. No
Yeah.
other reason. It's
Yeah.
not your genetic predisposition. It's like, no, this is why. Just take that out.
My morning sunrise walks have been game changers.
Mm.
Just setting your circadian rhythms with that morning light and then being outside during sunset. those are game changers to my mood, to even my productivity. I find I'm like super in
Totally.
flow state those
Hmm.
days. And if I skip my walk, I can feel it. And we're not talking about an exercise walk. We're talking about a sunlight walk.
It's the
Like,
walk. Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, so what else can people do? Take
So I
inventory.
think, yeah, I think inventory and go, well, which of these is a deficiency? And then look for things like you just said that are these high impact habits, right? So I always use the term high impact habits. What are the things that I can do that ultimately leverage as many different areas as possible? And a morning walk is the perfect example of a high impact habit, which 100% of my clients do every single day. We commit to 30 minutes of walking every morning at sunrise. So they can train before sunrise or they can train after sunrise or whatever they're doing, but we look at the time the sun rises and we make sure we're walking around that time. Even if people are in Iceland or some obscure place in the north, like you're going to commit to walking at that time, put on a big jacket and get out and walk, because there's so much value in setting your circadian rhythm, getting that natural sunlight, getting that natural air. That's a really high impact habit. So we're looking across all of the domains and saying, what are the things that are going to give me the highest leverage? So for some people, maybe they don't want to weight train. They're like, you know what, man, I don't want to learn. I've never done. Like you said, like I don't really like it. It's not a high leverage point for you. Maybe the opportunity is big, but the likelihood of following through is small. So what do
Mm.
we find for you that's like, okay, the opportunity is big and the likelihood of following through is big, right? Because I'm a big believer and I want to create 100% success in all of my clients. So if I design a program for a client and they don't follow through with 100% success, it's my fault. So I'm going to find something that suits your lifestyle, your desires, your skill set, and makes you feel like, yeah, you know what, I really love this. I think the reason I've been successful in fitness is because early on I learned to love working out. And every single human on this planet can learn to love working out if the workout fits your capability, if it fits your needs, and ultimately makes you feel good and not worse, right? And we can, yeah, good.
Yeah, I was going to say that this reminds me of two things. One, the importance of small incremental change as a mark of progress, right? To fall in love with the
Yeah,
process and not this idea of an outcome. Because if the outcome is too far away from where you're starting at, you're not going to see the progress.
mm,
But if your focus is the process, then you get those small incremental changes. This is where the dopamine comes. This is where you start to enjoy it. Process focus for me has created more joy than outcome focus.
yeah,
And this is the opposite of what I thought I was supposed to do in the gym. I thought I was supposed to have the goal, and I'm frustrated the whole way because I'm, 90% away from this goal and now I'm depressed. But if it's
yeah.
process, it's a game changer. So that was the first thing you said. So small incremental change, dopamine. You said one more thing. I'll remember it later, but go on.
Yeah, so I often speak about curating the objective and subjective variables, right? So objectively, I want to see a small number of things progressing, right? And maybe I want to see the scale change. Maybe I want to see my measurements change. Maybe I want to see my body fat change. Maybe I want to see the mirror change. And within my team, we're actually creating longevity metrics program. So we've
Mm-hmm.
identified 20 metrics that are objective that we can ultimately correlate with improved longevity numbers if we get better at these 20 longevity metrics. So we're adding to the potential list of wins, right? Because so many people are like, well, my weight isn't changing, my measurements aren't changing, and the scale's not really changing, but I've got these 15 longevity metrics that I know are getting better. So we have more opportunities to win. So that's good. Creating the subjective variables for me is like, I may ask you before I work out, Lisa, how you feeling? How, like, rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. I know I'm like a 7, Ben. And then after the workout, like, how you feeling now? I'm like an 8. Perfect. We can make you aware of how the exercise or where the intervention is actually change your subjective state, right? So one of my favorite thing to hear from my clients is, "Man, I'm not sure why. I just feel better. Like
Mm.
my energy just feels better." And that to me is one of the biggest wins. Because if you feel better, you show up better for your family, you show up better for yourself, you show up better in your profession, you have more energy to do the things you want to do. And that ultimately is the win, right? I always say people who are leaders have enough energy for two, right? We have enough energy for you, enough energy for me. So anything you need me to do, I got you, right? That's a leader in my definition.
Hmm.
So if we can help you curate that in a way that you're like, I just feel so much better. I have an abundance of energy. I don't need the coffee. I don't need to take a nap midday. I get to the end of my day and I'm tired, but I'm ready to go to bed rather than like I'm anxious because I've overconsumed stimulants. I think that's the greatest win of all because that gives you enough energy to do everything you could possibly ask for.
Absolutely. I was just doing a workshop this past weekend and someone said, energy exchange is free. And so if we're cultivating energy in our own space for vitality and endurance and vibrance, we show up that way, that then pings other people. They're going to bounce off our energy. And I'm sure you experience this too. It's not just what you say to people, Ben, it's the way you show up, that they're vibing off your energy. So energy can actually be a win-win. It's not, it doesn't follow like a supply and demand kind of thing. It's like, no, the more I have, the more you have,
Yeah.
because we're pinging off each other and we're amplifying. And so I would even go to say that the people who are listening, who are going to take the inventory, and you're going to analyze your strengths, and you're going to look at your deficits, and you're going to look at those small leveraged changes across all of them, just know that's going to affect others in a positive way. So even though you might be doing this for yourself, the ripple effect moves beyond you. And this is true because when I'm around vibrant, uplifted, healthy individuals, I feel that. And then I want to be more of that. So it's this self-generating cycle, I feel like. You said you had enough
So
energy for two. I think you have enough energy for the world, right? Because of the ripple effect.
Yeah. Yeah. And the reason I do all of this, Lisa, is one, I started doing it because I wanted to have more energy, vitality, peace of mind, calm, so I can show up for my family, for my children, and be a great leader for them because I didn't have it. I had so much
Mm,
pain around being lonely and really just being having absent family when I was a child that I think my mission in this world is to be able to provide, and I work with men specifically because I can relate, right? I can really
right.
specifically relate. Men can relate to me, I can relate to them. And so my thing with my guys is I need you to show up the best you possibly can for yourself first, for your family second, and your vocation third. Because if you can show up at your absolute best for your kids, knowing you're energized, knowing you've got everything you want to get done that day done, you can feel confident, you can have self-respect, you can show up more effectively for them rather than, maybe being angry or not feeling adequate or taking out your anger and self challenges on them. That's really where this mission comes from for me is like the muscle building is kind of the icing on the cake or the fat loss is
Mm,
that I truly don't care if people gain muscle and lose fat. I love to do it because I'm good at it. But really, it's like, hey, I'm teaching you how to do that so you can feel better about yourself, so you can be
yeah.
confident, so you can have self-respect. Not because the muscle matters, right? The muscle is just, yeah, Jim Rohn. Jim Rohn was one of my greatest mentors, and he says, "Don't set the goal to be a millionaire for the money. Set the goal for the person it makes of you to achieve it." And that's really what I tie into this business is like, man, the muscle and the fat loss, that doesn't matter. Like it's the person you're becoming day to day that allows you to show up more effectively for your kids, for your partner, for your business. That's really what I aspired to do and the change I want to be in this world.
I love that. I really want everybody to just really let that sink in, is that the goal you set is not to attain the goal. It's so that you can become the person that you need to become in order to reach that goal. And that is the juice of it, right? That's the process of it versus the outcome. I know we're sort of wrapping up on time. So how are people going to get more of you? Tell them where to go to get more, because you have so much wisdom and so much application based skills, products, and services to actually help this wisdom get out there. So, how do they get you?
Thank you, Lisa. So the first thing I'll say is I want everyone to know that your problems are seldom unique, right? We work with thousands of people from all over the world, and there's a very small number of challenges that everyone's having. And I think when people realize that, well, we all have the same problems, our gifts are unique, but our problems are very common. It maybe makes them feel a little bit more empowered to change. And so really within the muscle intelligence community, we're focused on helping people overcome challenges so they can show up at their best and performing whatever they want to perform in, right? Performance doesn't have to be, I want to look like a bodybuilder, I want to be a pro athlete. It's like, man, whatever you may just want to perform in, every day I go to the trampoline park with my kids, like I want to perform when I go there, and I'm going to have energy to do it and not be sitting on the sidelines, right? So performance can be literally anything. It can be waking up and dancing with your daughter in the morning. That's performance. I got to have energy to perform, right? Whatever it is for you, that's performance. And muscle intelligence is really focused on helping men over 35 show up at their highest and best, so that you can perform at whatever life asks of you. And I think because you're people listening to a podcast, Muscle Intelligence Podcast is probably the best place to find me. And we've been doing this since 2013. So we've got a lot of episodes. We got lots of resources, amazing guests like yourself. You've been on twice, which I still to this day think you're one of my favorite guests. I was like, we got to get Lisa back on again. It was so awesome. I would love to come to one of your live events. I'd love to do that. We'll make sure.
Let's do an event together. I just put it out to the universe. Let's make a life-changing event together. That's what we're going to do.
I would love to.
Okay.
I would love to. I'm sure there's so much overlap.
Yeah, there is.
Sounds like we're coming from different areas. There's always so much overlap.
There is. Okay, so I'm just going to close with what the kernels I took from this talk. 1, be who you are. 2, curiosity and play get you all the wins. 3, you're not what you, wait, what was it? You're not what you do. You are who you are. That's how I wrote it. Then the 6 pillars: move, eat, sleep, breathe, think, and the environment. Then leverage your strengths across multiple areas where possible. I love that one. I'm very pragmatic. Small incremental change for the win, focus on process, and then the hierarchy of self, family, and vocation. So these are the things that I'm going to chew on after this. Ben, time goes too fast. It was awesome talking to you, and I think this just is the catalyst for so much more. So I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa. I hope we can do it again.
Thanks for listening to Unlock Hope. If you'd like to follow us on social media, we're at Neurosculpting Institute on Facebook, at Neurosculpting on Instagram. You can always reach out to us on our website, neurosculpting.com, and you can download our app, Neuropraxis. Stay well, everybody.